pretty difficult. And following is also pretty difficult because the tires are just going to melt after a few corners. So if you can't pass, then I think it's about protecting the tires and then maybe going for an undercut, overcut will be difficult, or more stops.
So your strategy team are going to be hard at work this weekend. You've been so good in the past in calling the right strategy. You must be on them this weekend.
But you know, all the algorithms are not worth anything when the flag drops. So it's going to be different. I hope we're in a better position than where we are now.
Toto, best of luck this afternoon. Appreciate your time as always. Let's head back to Karun. Any updates?
Yes, Simon, I'm down here. They have managed to start the car, which is great news. I was just talking to the man here on my right, Jonathan Edels, the chief race engineer, who gave me the thumbs up that it's all good to go, and the bodywork's going back on. So it was a sensor issue, but it was buried quite deep down on the right-hand bank of the engine. So they had to go in and change it, but we're all good.
How are you? How you doing? How you doing?
Oh. Now, it's a good job I've got my long pole here because there are a lot of basketball players here today. Chris Bosch is with us. Chris, how are you enjoying this atmosphere and the build-up to this race?
It's been great. It's been phenomenal to have F1 back in the U.S. It's wonderful. We're big fans. I've been a big fan, and I'm just happy to be here right on the pit again to support the sport.
Chris, you have a camera in your hand.
Yeah.
Who are you going to take pictures of? It seems like you're a fan then.
I tell you, yeah, I'm a true fan. I love the sport. I love the cars. But, you know, Lewis, full disclaimer, Lewis is my guy. He's a great friend. And anytime he's out here doing what he does, I love to see greatness in action.
Were you a fan before, Lewis, of Formule 1 or racing?
I was. And then we met each other, and, you know, we just hit it off right after that. We have similar interests, but he was so nice to invite us and show us the world of F1, and then I became very hooked.
Chris, top man, appreciate it. Enjoy the race.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure. There we go.
Back down to our level, down here.
Come on then, quick prediction today. What's going to happen?
A bit of action in turn, maybe a little touch, but that's it. They're going to get through there, and they're going to be fighting until the last lap.
I don't think they're going to touch. I kind of think Max is going to come out with the lead, and I think even if they finish first and second, there's a long way to go.
We shall see. Here we go then. We are all set for the US Grand Prix.
For me, one of the best things about life is that we keep moving forward. We discover exciting new technologies, redefine who we are and how we want to lead our lives. Basically, we choose what we want our future to look like. So what's yours going to be?
Good to see all of you, yeah.
Why is Jerry so popular? It's been like this ever since we started using Workday. What do you mean? It makes it easier to develop great relationships with our suppliers. Now, everyone, everywhere loves Jerry. They sure do. They do. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
Workday. Finance, HR, planning, and spend management for a changing world.
For those of you watching F1 on Sky Q, the Sky Race Recap allows you to quickly catch up on all the key moments from a Grand Prix weekend. So if you join late and have missed any of the action or simply want to go back and watch the best bits once again, then you can. All you have to do is hit the red button on your remote and select Race Recap. A timeline of events will appear that you can navigate through, including the start, overtakes and all the crucial moments. So whether it's before, during or after the race, Sky Sports F1 is the go-to destination for all the best F1 news, views and action.
Austin, Texas, the finest of cities in the finest of states. Best barbecue in the world. And there's live music in every bar. The Texas Longhorns. Not these Longhorns. These Longhorns. Willie Nelson. I know what you're thinking. Come on, Willie. This is a sports intro.
He pushed me right wide in zone one.
I'm Willie T. Ribbs, the first black man to drive a Formula 1 car. Let me tell you about the sport in 2021. There's one hell of a fight going on. In one corner, you've got the GOAT, Lewis Hamilton. And in this corner is the young lion, Max Verstappen.
Yes!
And he's hungry.
That was epic.
Boy, do they know how to kick up some dust.
They touch! Verstappen and Hamilton have crashed out!
With 6 races to go, it couldn't be any tighter.
Let's keep this up.
So where better for the next showdown?
There's a long way to go, but let's keep pushing.
Because everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Well, down on 6th Street in Austin, it's party time. Here at the track, 6 races to go, 6 points separating the championship leader and the man in second place. And we're on the home straight. The party can wait. It's the 7th inning stretch, the 2-minute warning, the championship party on hold. Then there is much to be done before the title is settled. Welcome along to Austin. Round 17 of this absorbing, engrossing, unmissable season. And here in the Lone Star State, well, 2 stars are lighting up this championship battle. It's an anti-clockwise circuit, one of 7 on the calendar. And in 2019, the last time we were here at the Circuit of the Americas, ranked number 3 in on-track overtakes after the first lap. I'm sure we'll get more of the same here this afternoon. The Texas Longhorns marching band are here on the grid, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders too, and there is much to cheer as we look forward to the race around this 3.4-mile circuit. 2 DRS zones along the back straight and along the main straight, down towards turn 1 or up towards turn 1 as it rises some 30 meters in the space of about 200 meters on the track. 20 corners, and at turn 1, overtakes very much possible. This is 2019. It's Daniel Ricciardo on the inside of Sebastian Vettel, who started second and dropped back to 7th place before he had to retire from the race. Turn 12, the lead changed hands some 5 laps from the end. Valtteri Bottas getting past Lewis Hamilton, who was struggling with tyre wear. That could be very much an issue for this afternoon's Grand Prix. And this is a battle that we all look forward to repeated once again. Turn 16, 17 and 18, Verstappen and Hamilton. It was Hamilton who had to yield that time. He lost second place to Max Verstappen. The tyre compounds for this afternoon, the C4 is the soft, the C3 is the medium, the C2 is the hard. The hard and the medium, the preferred race tyre. Carlos Sainz in the top 10 for Ferrari, starts on the soft, says if he had the choice, he'd go back and do it again and start on the mediums. Here's the grid then for the US Grand Prix, the 60th World Championship Grand Prix to take place in the United States, and for the 7th time this season, it's Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton on the front row. Behind them, Sergio Perez starts 3rd, alongside Charles Leclerc for Ferrari. 2 Ferraris in the top 5 on the grid for the first time since Baku. Carlos Sainz is 5th, Daniel Ricciardo is 6th, Q3 for an 8th consecutive Grand Prix. Lando Norris starts 7th, where he finished last time out. Pierre Gasly, late drama for him, but he starts 8th, ahead of Valtteri Bottas, 5-place engine penalty. That's why he's down in 9th alongside Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri. Esteban Ocon for Alpine has Antonio Giovinazzi for company, Alpha's best start in 3 races. He's ahead of Lance Stroll for Aston Martin and Nicholas Latifi for Williams. Behind them, Kimi Raikkonen, 6 races to go of his Formula 1 career, alongside Mick Schumacher for Haas. And behind Schumacher is teammate Nikita Mazepin, alongside Sebastian Vettel, who took a full power unit and was relegated to the back of the grid, along with Fernando Alonso and George Russell as well. 6 World Championships between Vettel and Alonso, starting 18th and 19th. Soon, Martin Brundle, the cheering will all be coming from the crowd as we look forward to the start of this race. It's a long race, it could be a patient race, but that start has got us all energised. I can't wait for it.
And it's such a short run up there as well, 240 metres from pole to the first braking point. The track seems nearly as wide when you get there. It's going to be hot, bumpy, and there are some ferocious corners, particularly between the first corner and down to the hairpin of turn 11. It's a relentless track. It's a relentless season and championship. And there they are again on the front row together. And I'm expecting a few fireworks. It'll be feisty up into turn 1, and why not? But of course they start the race with over 100 kilograms of fuel, like having two light passengers on board, basically, as they go into the start of the race. And the front tyres are not that warm when they get there. As usual, they push the Red Bull back a little bit so he can lay some more rubber down. They're just doing the same to Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes on our right there, so that he can spin the wheels and lay a little bit of his own Pirelli rubber down on where he wants to get the best launch, an important launch for this year's World Championship.
Everybody's on the medium tyre to start, no surprise, apart from Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda, who were forced onto the softs. That's what they set their fastest times with in Q2. And as we now go ahead with the formation lap, as we get to turn 1, you'll see they've taken the baguette curves on the exit of turn 1 away. Now, if anyone gets forced wide, there's nothing in terms of a curve to disrupt you there. So it's better for the drivers that do get forced wide, but they're going to monitor those track limits throughout the race.
Yes, and that reminds us, doesn't it, Rosberg, Hamilton.
Yeah.
With teammates up into that corner, and so many others. You've got to commit on the way in and kind of sort it out through the exit and hope you've got decent track position.
All the teams and Pirelli saying this is a two-stop race today, which is good news for the strategists because they get 2 bites at the cherry to try and get it right. Let's head down to Karun in the pit lane.
Thanks, Crofty. Amazing atmosphere down here in the pit lane, but a lot of tension with the two title protagonists. But on the formation lap, you could see them coming onto the back straight. That is the critical part for Red Bull and Max Verstappen, because Hamilton has been quicker than them down that straight. So on the opening lap, first you've got to get to the first corner first, and if Max does that, he needs to break away from Lewis's slipstream before they get to turn 11. That is the critical thing for Red Bull on the first lap.
Yes, Red Bull, Verstappen's been third slowest down the back straight, but he's not slow on this formation lap. He took off, and a lot of the pack just didn't stay with him. Max wanted to put a lot of energy into his tyres and his brakes, and now he'll start to back the pack up because he doesn't want to sit on the grid for 40 seconds or such like. It'll still be the thick end of half a minute, depending on how quickly they form up. We'll keep an eye on that, but it's very hot. They're showing track temp of 36 degrees. Feels a lot warmer when I was out on the grid a bit earlier on. It is baking out there.
140,000 fans here, and it's no surprise, really. We're in Texas. They've got a lot of oil around here. There is an energy about Formula One this weekend. With 6 races to go, we have a championship lead that has changed hands 4 times in the last 7 rounds, with neither Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton leading by more than 8 points in that time, and they're locked alongside each other on that front row for this race. We've got 56 laps coming our way. It's very hot on the track. 2-stop strategy. Tyre wear is going to be critical. Getting through the first corner is going to be critical. Anything could happen here.
And Carlos Sainz on the soft tyres along with Tsunoda in the top 10s. Carlos Sainz to be on the grid. If I could trade those in right now before the start of the race, I would gladly do so. But of course, it means that he has to, means that he very much has to use them, and Lewis very, very late onto his grid slot, 8 meters behind Max. Max has not pointed his car towards Lewis. He wants to go absolutely in a straight line and sail in round the outside.
That's so interesting. I saw him last night. I had a chat. I said, what are you going to do at the start? I'm going straight. I said, you're not looking left? He went, only when I get to the apex. And I thought he was winding me up a little bit at that stage, but he wasn't. He's not overly worried about Lewis Hamilton. He's going out to do the job that he can do.
Now, Red Bull wanted a really good, fast outlap, and Lewis Hamilton wanted to slow it all down a little bit. And still then, they're getting ready to form up at the back of the grid. Always the medical car last, of course.
Alan van der Merwe in the medical car. Glad to see him back once again as we watch to see George Russell aiming to become the first Williams driver since Pastor Maldonado in Spa 2011 to score points from 20th or lower on the grid. He's slotted into position. Everyone is now ready. 5 lights are on. It's lights out. Away we go. Hamilton gets away well, and he's getting towards Max Verstappen now. Tries to cover him off and pushes him to the left-hand side. Perez is in acres of space as Hamilton on the inside pushes Max Verstappen wide. Can Perez find back? No, he can't. Hamilton is just ahead of Verstappen. Perez challenging his teammate around turn 2. Hamilton leads from Verstappen. Then comes Sergio Perez, and then the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton got the dream start that he wanted. 3 times he's won here from second in the past. He has made a lightning start and leads the race as Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo tangle the Ferrari and the McLaren, almost touching wheels, with Lando Norris just behind.
Yeah, Sainz on the soft tyres with a decent start, but the initial launch, the reaction time, Hamilton was faster away, and Verstappen, try as he might, couldn't do anything about it.
Hamilton then leads the US Grand Prix, and he's stretching away from Max Verstappen. Perez third, then comes Leclerc, and behind him Carlos Sainz under pressure from Daniel Ricciardo, trying to get in the slipstream, but he touched the back of the Ferrari and had to just drop back a bit. There goes Ricciardo, here comes Lando Norris down the inside. It's Ferrari and McLaren, what a battle. Norris on the inside, thought he got the place. Carlos Sainz is pushed wide and still somehow stays ahead of his former teammate. Ricciardo nips on the inside now of Lando Norris to get that place back, and it's all happening on lap 1 here.
You'd think it was the last lap of the Grand Prix, the way they're going at it, but they do know these are the easiest opportunities to make up places, and it's a bitter battle between McLaren and Ferrari, and look at that, what a lovely overtake through 16, 17 and 18 from Daniel Ricciardo.
Ricciardo then up to 5th, making places as well. Sebastian Vettel 15th, Alonso 17th, Lance Stroll's dropped down to 19th, Latifi is plumb last as it stands. Out in front, it's Lewis Hamilton from Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc, then Ricciardo, Sainz, Norris and Tsunoda is up to 8th, Bottas in 9th, putting pressure on Yuki Tsunoda. Down the inside at turn 1 goes Valtteri Bottas. Can he get a good traction, good exit as they tumble down the hill? No, he can't get past Tsunoda. More frustration for Bottas.
Yeah, and remember how difficult Tsunoda was to pass by Lewis Hamilton in Istanbul. He does not like to give a place up easily to anybody, let alone Mercedes is cutting the curve there. You're not really supposed to do at that corner. Tsunoda, it's turn 6 and you've got to take to the track, but hey, you can afford to get a couple of warnings, can't you, if it keeps you track position. But off they go then, and that's interesting. Verstappen then hanging on to Hamilton.
4 times, though, in the last 6 races, including this one, here at the Circuit of the Americas, the driver starting second has led the opening lap. It's happening this year with Lewis Hamilton, but as you rightly say, Martin, he is not stretching away that much from Max Verstappen, who is less than a second behind at the moment.
And Verstappen lucky he got his teammate Perez behind him, because if it had been another driver, I think Verstappen would have been down to 3rd place by the exit of turn 2. Anyway, game on, and he is hanging on very nicely indeed, isn't he? Verstappen to Hamilton. There'll be a bit of management going on now.
He's sliding a lot. Understood.
And that maybe is an indication that Verstappen can afford to be patient, sliding, losing grip at the rear.
Do you remember I said in qualifying, the Mercedes didn't look particularly well balanced. I think that they've had to raise that car, maybe make it a little bit stiffer to keep the underneath of the car intact in what is a very bumpy racetrack for 56 laps. I don't mind the bumps at all. It's not a criticism. But I do think Mercedes have had to give up something through the weekend that they look like they had in their pocket on Friday morning.
So if it's sliding a lot, that might be an indication that it's working its tyres a little bit harder and might need to pit just that little bit earlier. But for Verstappen, whilst he can see that Mercedes sliding, he still knows he's in a slower car in a straight line, which makes overtaking that more difficult for him.
Yeah, and of course, unfortunately for Max, he's in the turbulent air of Hamilton, and he will end up sliding a bit as well. But look, he looks like he's got so much more grip in turn 11 down at the hairpin there.
So, Hamilton leads from Verstappen. Hamilton's teammate, Valtteri Bottas, has been overtaken by Pierre Gasly, trying to get past Yuki Tsunoda when we last saw him. Well, Gasly, the other AlphaTauri, has got past Bottas to relegate him to 10th spot. George Russell has now got ahead of Sebastian Vettel as well, moving up into 14th place. And Latifi has leapfrogged over Nikita Mazepin to remove him from 20th. The stewards looked at turn 1, looked at the incident, said no investigation necessary. Talk us through it, Martin.
Just watching run there. Max realised immediately that Lewis got a slightly better start, went to close him off, but Lewis had track position. You can go around the outside there and gather some momentum, and this is where I think Max would have lost out to anybody else. Well, he would have, wouldn't he? Anybody else other than his teammate who yielded to him, and that was important for his championship position. And there it is. Lewis just got the most perfect launch on the inside, pole position on the outside here, which I think is a bit counterintuitive in some respects. They all went steaming up there. And, oh, there's the contact then.
That's why Lance Stroll got relegated down towards the rear of the field, and Nicholas Latifi too. The two Canadians in what is arguably a home race for them.
Sandwich by the pass, man. You just sent it front wing damage.
Certainly their only race so far this season on the North American continent, taking each other out. This was Lando Norris trying to get past his teammate and the Ferrari of Sainz.
I think Lando realised momentarily there that we could end up with all four of those cars out of the race if it had carried on at that rate.
Well, which, given that McLaren have the slender advantage of 7.5 points over Ferrari at the moment, probably wouldn't have been a bad thing for McLaren, but they know there are points on the table and there's a long way to go. And into the pits already comes Esteban Ocon in the Alpine to switch to the hard compound tyre. So whether he had a puncture, picked up a bit of debris, that forced him into the pits a bit earlier, I don't know. But certainly you wouldn't have expected him to come in at the end of lap 3.
So Max then can afford to sit there and look after his tyres a little bit. Lewis knows that, but it's a bit early to talk about it, but it'll be relevant soon enough. The undercut here, getting in before your rival and putting on a fresh set of tyres could be worth a couple of seconds. It's extremely powerful because there's so many corners around this track, so many key corners as well.
And that will be why Esteban Ocon came in then. You see the damage to his front wing and to the end plate. We can have a look at what caused that damage coming through turn 2 on board with Esteban Ocon. He's got the AlphaTauri of Gasly in front of him. Oh, and it just got clipped there by a very fast starting Alfa Romeo of not just Kimi Räikkönen but Antonio Giovinazzi as well. They both started well, the two Alphas, up to 11th and 12th, and necessitating a front wing change for the Alpine team, and that's why Esteban Ocon is now running towards the rear, in fact right at the rear of this field, as Hamilton, his tyres maybe a little bit more warmed up and tuned in, has set the fastest lap of the race, and he's about 9/10 clear of Max Verstappen. Verstappen's still in DRS range.
And this pair have exactly the same combo of brand new tyres available this afternoon as well, so there's no advantage or disadvantage to them in terms of what they've got in terms of new hard tyres and new soft tyres, should they choose to put those on. Karun has news.
Yeah, Martin, just looking at the pace there, you mentioned that Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton running at a very strong pace. But I have to shout out also for Sergio Perez. Last time around, only a couple tenths away, and he's going with them. The top three breaking away from the rest of the field here. And what is interesting, of course, is they've got to look for the gap. When can they pit? When will a gap open up? And that is so far down to Valtteri Bottas in 10th place. He's already, guys, a pit stop gap behind Hamilton.
Yeah, Valtteri struggling then in the traffic, as we've so often seen. And the interesting one, if Perez can come and join this battle, Red Bull can use him tactically with the undercut and start playing the games that Mercedes are normally able to play. They really need Perez to pull up into this frame and get in the DRS range, because at the moment Hamilton's dragging Verstappen nicely along down the straight. You can see the rear wing opening on Verstappen's car like a great big letterbox.
Well, I was just about to mention Sergio Perez, because you talked about the tyres, Martin, for both Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. They've both got the same combo of tyres. Max has had a lap time deleted already for exceeding track limits.
Okay, Max, first track limit was exceeded at turn 19 last lap.
Yeah, that's your first warning. You'll get another warning, then you'll get a black and white flag, and then you might start getting penalties in the race if you keep exceeding track limits. And then monitoring turn 1, turn 9 and turn 19. Back to the tyres. Perez is out of step with Verstappen and Hamilton. He's got a new set of softs, but only one new set of the hard tyre. You talk about, can they bring him in for the undercut to join that particular fray? That's Latifi's front wing after the contact with Lance Stroll that needs replacing. But can they also leave Perez out a little bit longer so that he stays ahead of a Lewis Hamilton and starts blocking him? This is a race where teammates can actually work with each other to block their rivals. And all coming out of the pits, Nicholas Latifi has already had one contact at turn 1, almost has another, this time with Esteban Ocon.
And Paul at Sky Race Control telling me Lewis is saying he's quicker than me. And it does look that way, doesn't it? The Red Bull of Verstappen looks very, very comfortable following along. But as I say, Red Bull could really do with Perez closing that 2.5 second gap so they can start playing tactical games.
So, towards the rear of the field, let's have a look. Vettel making places, Alonso making up places. Stroll is back ahead of the two Hasses now. Latifi will see this once again as he comes out of the pits, and you make your exit to the pits. And you're then right into the inside line into turn 1. And as he comes out, there's Esteban Ocon. Just thinking, wow, this has been a race of adventure and not really going my way so far today. I'd quite like to have a few clean laps, thank you very much. And it's a good job those curbs have been removed. You can see the black outlines of where they were taken away. Otherwise, you'd have had quite a bumpy ride there. George Russell, meanwhile, in the other Williams, is up into 13th behind the Alphas of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi. Kimi Raikkonen, winner here, of course, in 2018.
Copy Lewis.
Lewis Hamilton is rather getting the impression that the Red Bull is the faster car here at COTA this afternoon. His teammate Valtteri Bottas still struggling in 10th place, can't get past Gasly or Tsunoda. Norris is still behind Sainz, Ricciardo still behind Leclerc, but there's not much between the Ferraris and the McLarens either.
Bit of a scruffy T11 hairpin there for Max Verstappen, got in a bit deep, but in the slipstream down the back straight towards turn 12, he's right back into play.
When Lewis says he's quicker than me right now, you would expect it, given that Verstappen's staying within DRS range and he's got that extra pace boost, which by the time you get to the end of the straight is worth something like 14 miles an hour. It's an effective DRS here.
Yeah.
Onwards we go then through that long series, 16, 17 and then 18, with such a load to the tyres.
And as I was saying on Sebastian Vettel there, in a good old fight with Fernando Alonso, a couple of world champions, but they're fighting over 14th place at the moment after some penalties on the grid. But I think the Mercedes, when it's the Mercedes with the DRS open, they can't use the diffuser stall so well. You need the load from the rear wing to compress and collapse the rear suspension to go and choke the diffuser up and stall it out, so as Alonso then makes for the pit lane.
So after only 8 laps, Fernando Alonso is trying the undercut on Sebastian Vettel. I would expect then Alonso, once the first round of pit stops have been completed, to be ahead of Vettel, but this is pushing him into some quite severe territory towards the end of the stint, towards the end of the race. He's going to have to nurse those tyres for an awful lot longer than, say, Sebastian Vettel would. 2.5 second stop, fairly decent stop there for the Alpine team, and Alonso will come back out onto the track ahead of Mazepin down in 18th place.
Yeah, Valtteri, who was so outstanding last time out in Istanbul, started 9th, dropped to 10th, is now 26 seconds off the lead. So as Karim pointed out, well over a pit stop, cost you around 20 seconds here, providing they get it all sorted out. We've seen a few rather difficult pit stops this season, haven't we?
He's sliding a lot and I have a lot more pace, so I just want to tell you.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
And your lottery numbers are...
I say Valtteri Bottas, it wasn't just outstanding last time out, but also the last time he came here to COTA as well, won from pole on that particular afternoon. Carlos Sainz on the soft compound tyre. Is he starting to struggle a bit? Lando Norris is very much getting interested in the McLaren behind him. Two former teammates, still two very, very good friends, scrapping it out at the moment for 6th place. We haven't been to Sky Race Control for a while. Paul de Resta, good afternoon.
I know sometimes, Crofty, it takes us a bit of time to get there, but that message was as live as you get. I mean, F1 have spun that out quickly. That's great news, isn't it? If Max is following there, it means there's got a race behind and a race that's going on. But he seems very comfortable to do the lifting coast on the onboard and stay within DRS distance. Mercedes are in that management stage though as well, so great.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at Sainz and Norris then, shall we? Down the back straight where Norris very much had an overtake in mind.
Carlos will be instructed by race director to give position to Lando for turn 12, lap 1, I'm afraid.
No, I gave it to Ricciardo back in turn 16. I did that on purpose. It was not Lando.
Oh, Max Verstappen a lot closer to Lewis Hamilton at the end of the straight there. If you've been instructed to give a place back to a guy that you kept ahead of by gaining an unfair advantage, but you've let his teammate past, how do you sort that one out?
It's very difficult, but yeah, he's been told to let Lando through, but Lando's now behind him, but he felt he already let one McLaren through as a penalty for going wide.
Yeah,
down in 12 though.
He's going to lose 2 places where he thinks he's actually done the right thing anyway. As it stands, Verstappen as close to Lewis Hamilton now as they were throughout this race, bar the run down to turn 1 as they cross the line. Hamilton then leading at the end of 9 laps, 9/10 of a second the difference, but Verstappen needs to be just that little bit more close to Hamilton in turn 1 to get the overtake done.
Yeah, and they've kicked into overdrive as Hamilton and Verstappen, and Perez can't stay with them now. He's now 4.4 off the lead, well clear of Leclerc, 10 seconds clear of his pursuer. But as these two great drivers start to just stretch their legs a little bit, it's Sergio right now. Let's see how it pans out a bit later on, but Max is certainly sitting there quite menacingly, isn't he?
Tsunoda into the pits, Karun Chandhok, soft tyres not lasting longer than 9 laps for him.
That's not really a surprise coming in here for the AlphaTauri. Yeah, I mean, it's use of a Bottas, I guess, one less car in the way. But looking up ahead, Croppy, if Max cannot pass Lewis on track, where's the gap going to open? And I think that's going to be between Leclerc and Perez. So in about 5-6 laps time, start to work for activity between Red Bull and Mercedes for when they pull the trigger. So around lap 15.
Also coming into the pits, George Russell, who's now down in 17th, and I think we saw Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alpha as well, down to 15th for him. Through the middle sector of this lap, and some of the slower corners in that middle sector, the Red Bull really does seem to have an advantage grip-wise, traction-wise to that Mercedes.
Yeah, the problem is Max is in the turbulent air and the hot air coming off the back.
Tires are really hot and I don't think we're particularly quick.
Okay, understood, Max.
All right, who's coming in? Max Verstappen is coming in then for the undercut on Mercedes. Tyres getting hot. He's decided he doesn't want those hot tyres for any longer, so let's put a set of hards on the car, and away we go. That was a very nice stop, no problems, very smooth for Verstappen.
So they're going to drop behind Leclerc and Ricciardo as well. There goes Leclerc. Can he get out in front of Ricciardo? No. So he's got some work to do.
Well, the important thing is that he comes out in front of Carlos Sainz as Lando Norris now makes his pit stop, and there's no way Carlos Sainz is going to give a place back to him with that stop. Tyres are okay, says Lewis Hamilton. He'll carry on. So whilst Verstappen could get the momentary gain of a new fresh set of tyres and the extra pace that goes with it, Hamilton is going to carry on for a bit longer and make up the arrears at the end of the race.
So Red Bull have gone for the undercut. They've gone for the undercut early, it must be said. And that's an interesting one, isn't it? So Max suddenly saying, look, I'm sliding around now behind him. He's not going particularly quickly. Very strategic there, but Max needs to clear these back markers extremely quickly.
Yeah, so through the hairpin we go. Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, former teammates, of course, at Red Bull. He's got DRS on Ricciardo, but he's not got the fastest car down the straights as Max Verstappen. And even with DRS, he only just gets to the braking point ahead of the McLaren. Verstappen then up to 4th. And if you're thinking to yourself, why is Verstappen running in 4th? And you've only just come and joined us for the coverage here of this US Grand Prix, if you're a Sky Q customer, press the red button. You can watch the highlights so far alongside the live action. Verstappen started on pole. He's now up to 4th. Hamilton leads.
And on his out lap, he's 9/10ths faster through the middle sector alone, despite getting up to speed and despite having to pass the McLaren, than Lewis Hamilton out in the lead. So a lot of grip from these hard tyres.
So Hamilton then ahead of Perez by 5 seconds now. Leclerc ahead of Verstappen. That's the next car that Verstappen has got to clear. The Ferrari's had pace so far this weekend. That won't be the easiest thing in the world as Ricciardo and Sainz now come into the pits running 5th and 6th. And this is where the crews get to work and get to work as well as they can. Sainz was behind Ricciardo, will come out behind Ricciardo. 2.9 second stationary stop from the McLaren. 7/10ths of a second Ferrari making up on the McLaren just by the stationary time that it took. Ferrari making up on the into the racetrack. They
should force Hamilton not.
Yeah, that's the side. You've heard it from Alonso, Hamilton, Senna, Prost, all the great champions, and I haven't mentioned everybody there, of course, but they've got so much spare capacity driving the car at winning race-leading speeds. They've got so much capacity they can think about what else is going on, not just the track conditions, but the strategy as well. It's always been the case. Something a bit of a funny markup, isn't there, on the middle of his front right tyre.
checkered box.
So they're going to bring Perez in. Is Hamilton going to stay out? Is this the double undercut from Red Bull?
Used medium tyres then going on. Remember, he had to do, because he had his time deleted in qualifying, so they've only done one flying lap of these tyres, but they're not brand spanking new. Oh, it's a slow stop.
And he's only got one set of the hard compound tyres as well. There is Charles Leclerc in the background coming in for his pit stop, which means he's out of the way of Max Verstappen now.
Absolutely, Crocky. That was critical. But what wasn't good news for Red Bull is that 3.7-second stop. They needed Perez to have a clean one here, because what Max is effectively saying is if Perez pits and then pushes hard on these fresh tyres, it'll force Mercedes into bringing Lewis in early, and it means he won't have a big tyre advantage later on when the stint gets longer, basically the second stint. That's what they're trying to do, is force Hamilton in early, and a longer stop, extra 2 seconds, effectively buys Mercedes another 2 laps, so that's not good news for them.
And Verstappen's taken 4 seconds out of Hamilton's lead since he went out on the fresh tyres, still pumping in really good times, but of course he's already using up the laps on them.
This is Carlos Sainz into turn 12, where we saw him running a little wide on lap 1 in his battle with the 2 McLarens. This time he gets past Sebastian Vettel, and Carlos Sainz running in 8th place as it stands.
And Norris is still behind Sainz, so should the steward say, no, you have to give Norris a place, he might still have to yield, but they're clearly arguing about that right now.
Norris is making his way through the field. That's his pass on Sebastian Vettel. So, yeah, maybe Carlos Sainz could find it a little easier. And there is the Mercedes pit crew waiting for Lewis Hamilton. Race leader Lewis Hamilton is coming in to make his pit stop. As he stops, we can watch Max Verstappen, and he's just going through turn 19 at the moment. Hard tyres go on for Hamilton. His stationary time, 2.8 seconds. So about a tenth of a second difference between Verstappen and Hamilton. Verstappen is making his way along the pit lane there. He goes past Lewis Hamilton and into the lead of the race, and you can hear the cheers from the Red Bull fans. The undercut has been triggered by Red Bull. Max Verstappen now ahead of Hamilton. Did Mercedes stay out a bit too long, or by the end of the race will Hamilton have fresher tyres to get that advantage back again? You better stay with us. We've got another 42 laps to go here. This is just bubbling up nicely at the Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, he would like to have stayed out longer, wouldn't he? And they did have to react to Perez. Perez has stopped slow, but so that's the undercut we're talking about. Get out on your fresh tyres earlier than your main rival, and of course now Max can start making some nice speed without being in the hot turbulent air of Lewis Hamilton. What he doesn't have is DRS, drag reduction system. He hasn't got anybody to follow. He can't get within a second of somebody. Paul at Sky Race Control.
Mercedes' hands are tied, aren't they? They've normally got the upper advantage with having Bottas, but Perez has played perfectly into this. He's allowed them not to extend the stint. Hamilton was on the conservative mode, but he's got pace, and especially with him being on that medium tyre, I know it's used, but it will deliver a bit more grip early on, and they don't even want him in the DRS zone. So a lot of this jigsaw to still happen.
Absolutely, the puzzle is, we just barely got the outer edges of the puzzle done so far. Verstappen's last lap was a 1:40.1. Hamilton needs to be lapping substantially quicker than that to close this gap down, and we'll see if he's got that pace. In the middle sector of this lap, he's already 0.3 quicker than Max Verstappen, who completes the end of lap 14, starts lap 15, and there's Lewis Hamilton making his way around the final corner to cross the line of the gap. 6.7 seconds now. Pierre Gasly, who had late drama on the grids, has drama in the race.
Okay, problem at the back.
Okay, is it engine, is it suspension? What's happening?
Suspension.
We lost the rear suspension.
Okay, that'll be a concern then for the sister car of Tsunoda as well, if the bumps and curbs have broken his suspension.
Well, it is very bumpy here. The curves are pretty aggressive as well. Gasly taking it very, very slowly indeed to nurse that AlphaTauri back to the pits. He's never scored a point in his previous 2 visits here in Austin. He's not going to be scoring a point here this afternoon. Looks like Gasly very much out of the race, and this is Hamilton coming out of the pits and seeing Verstappen a long way clear, but he is starting to reduce that gap.
So Lewis's tyres are 3 laps younger than Max's tyres.
I think 3 laps, that's not going to make any difference at all, but here, once the tyres start to go off the cliff, they start to degrade quite significantly.
Yeah, it's a 2-stop race, but they're certainly pushing And clearly we saw with Max, you know, when they're brand new, the hard compound tyres are yielding a lot of grip. But so far on this lap, Hamilton 0.3 faster. Yeah. Will the straight line speed, the poor straight line speed of the Red Bull, be a problem later on if Hamilton gets on his tail?
Strat 4, everything you got.
That's Valtteri Bottas currently running in 5th place. He hasn't stopped yet, and they want some more pace from Valtteri Bottas on those medium tyres that he's had right from the start. He's got another new engine, his 6th internal combustion engine of the season in the back of that Mercedes car. They want to give it absolute full beams as he comes into the pits now. So forget about those tyres, we're going to change those. You've just got to give it everything on this lap, and he certainly did that. Leclerc goes past the finish line, as does Ricciardo, Sainz and Norris. And Sebastian Vettel, who hasn't pitted yet, running in 9th. Valtteri Bottas wants to get out ahead of the Aston Martin driver. Not sure that's going to happen because both Vettel and Stroll make their way towards turn 1 before Bottas can go from 80 kilometres an hour to maximum pace on the track, and he'll come out behind Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. Let's look back to see what happens to Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen as they go wheel to wheel, and Raikkonen gets pushed wide and they almost touch and come a cropper at turn 1. Raikkonen and Alonso separated by 0.5 millimetre, it seemed, going through there before Alonso had to back out.
Love it. What's their combined age? 80 odd?
I'll tell you, 42 and 82 is their combined age.
Excellent.
It's still a young man's game, Martin.
Let's hope they never grow up. That's great racing.
Great precision racing as well. That could have ended in an absolute disaster for both, but they didn't. Meanwhile, Sky Race Control, Paul di Resta, what you got for us?
Just a bit more drama, Crofty.
Oh, I love it. Before you do,
Raikkonen overtook me outside turn 1. I need the position quickly.
Copy.
Bit of history there, Crofty, but I was just going to say Hamilton tried to speak to the team. I heard the channel open, but it was broken up. They couldn't understand them. Is that going to add the information that they can't get back to the team? Of course, he can hear them, but he can't give them how he feels with wing direction, equally on the pit stops, how he wants to balance.
Yeah, you're almost fighting with one arm tied behind your back on that one. Now, we loved this. We loved watching it. They did touch. Did Raikkonen get past Alonso by leaving the track and gaining that advantage in doing so?
Only because Fernando put him there. Look, Fernando's opened the steering wheel, and yeah, they can't penalise him for that. He's shredding parts. I don't know if they're his parts or from earlier incidents, but I suspect they're his. Oh dear, that'll hurt the downforce of the Alfa Romeo a little bit. I'll be disappointed if they penalise Kimi for that, because I think it's not like he arrived too fast and ran wide, is it? Let's be honest. There was a point there where the Alpine was sort of not really quite turning the corner.
I'd also be disappointed in Fernando Alonso if he didn't try and get that place back. The guile and the cunning of a high-speed fox, Fernando Alonso. So there's the live Drivers' Championship. Lando Norris currently 1 point ahead of Sergio Perez, if it all stays the way it is. Norris went into this race, by the way, some 32 points behind Valtteri Bottas, who's currently 3rd in that championship. In terms of the battle for the driver's title, it was 6 points in Verstappen's favour. When we started this race, it's currently 13 points in Verstappen's favour. Make that 14 because he's got a fastest lap as well. 159 points available between now and the end of Abu Dhabi. Still a long way to go as we watch Fernando Alonso not getting that place back and not getting anywhere near Kimi Raikkonen on this latest lap.
I think if he does, it'll be quite a brutal move.
Yes. But to be fair, when we saw the slow motion replay, there was a lot more contact than I at first thought.
He opened the steering wheel a bit, didn't he? But yeah, I mean, all's fair in love and more in Formula 1, as they probably don't say. But there's great racing all through the field. Top 3 covered by 11.7 seconds at the moment. And Lewis Hamilton's stalled out slightly now. He's lost the newness, the absolute grip of those hard compound tyres.
Let's go to the Red Bull pit wall, shall we? Christian Horner is with us, the team principal, and whilst the start wasn't so good for you, Christian, you've got the lead back now. How are you feeling? Nice and calm on the pit lane or not?
Yeah, it was a shame about the start, but we had good pace, as you can see, on the medium tyre at the start, so we pulled the trigger early, so we got 3 laps more on these tyres, but Max is doing a good job of managing it.
Yeah, what happened on the start? Can you see anything from the data, or was it just a perfect one from Lewis?
I think it was a good one from Lewis and an average one from us. So I haven't got all the info on it, but that's what it looked like.
Are you going to be watching intently the final closing stages of this race? Do you feel that those 3 laps could prove crucial, the 3 laps that you came in earlier?
Well, there's a long way to go. It's like a game of chess, this race. So let's see how the strategies play out over the second half. But you can rest assured there's not much between the teams.
And what do you think you can do with Sergio then? Can you get him into play? He needs a touch more pace, doesn't he?
Yeah, we know he's gentle on the tyres. He's doing a good job. And, you know, he's in play in this race. So that's crucial for us.
Cheers, Christian. Thank you very much. Valtteri Bottas gets past Lance Stroll, moves up into 9th place. Stroll yet to stop in this race. He's the only driver that hasn't come in for a pit stop. Bottas now chasing after Yuki Tsunoda, and he'll have seen it. No investigation necessary. Alonso and Raikkonen.
As far as I'm concerned, that's right, as you know. Tsunoda, he's great little defensive driver, and he's not ridiculous or dirty with it. He just places his car well, carrying good speed, and Bottas had a couple of nibbles at getting through, but this is very reminiscent, isn't it? The early stages of Istanbul with a Mercedes trying to pass him. Whether it's actually doing his own race much good, I don't know, but he's in the World Championship points, so stick with it.
And keeping Valtteri Bottas at bay, who has got DRS to try and close in on him. Scored in 5 races so far this season, Yuki Tsunoda, hoping to make it 6, of course, this weekend. Tsunoda gets past Stroll, gets into a bit of dirt and dust, and then Valtteri Bottas nips past the Aston Martin, and as I say, still to stop. He has now stopped. Lance Stroll was running in 10th place, has come back onto the track in 15th.
Nearly a day late and $1 short from Lance there with his move across the track, but he corrected it and retook the racing line.
So here we are then on lap 19, and Max Verstappen with the fastest lap of the race and 6.1 seconds, 6.3 seconds advantage over Lewis Hamilton. A bit of time management going on, I think, between Verstappen, Hamilton and Perez at the top at the moment. Perez lapping about 2/10 on average behind the others. There's Bottas trying to get past Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda goes deep. It's the old switcheroo then from Valtteri Bottas. He allows Tsunoda to go deep and says, thank you, I'll just nip it on the inside and I'll take that 8th place from you.
Yeah, when you have to defend like that, you're helpless at certain points. So now then, Valtteri, where can you get from there? You've got a lot of space in front of you to catch up. Lando Norris, Sainz and Ricciardo. So Valtteri can now get on with it and I think use the pace he'll have. That's an important move for him. It's come somewhat later than he would have wanted on lap 21.
First blue flag of the afternoon as well. Max Verstappen getting past Nikita Mazepin, who is running last, 19th at the moment. The only retiree so far, Pierre Gasly, with what we think is suspension problems. And the weekend attendance here, 400,000. A big thank you to all the fans who have come here to COTA. What an atmosphere it has been this weekend. It is so good to be back racing in the States. Karun, down to you.
I just want to give a big shout out to Charles Leclerc, who is driving a stonking race, isn't he? I mean, he's 10 seconds now ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, which is a stellar effort in a car package that we thought were very comparable between McLaren and Ferrari. Further up, Martin, just to add to your point from earlier, the Hamilton chase has stalled, hasn't it? He came out of the pit 6.7 behind, and the gap now only 6.2. So this does feel like the momentum is swinging towards Max and Red Bull.
Yes, momentarily it might swing Hamilton's way on this lap, because Verstappen, as I mentioned, lapping Nikita Mazepin, lost a fair bit of time in doing so, and the gap down to 5.5 seconds. But Hamilton is going to be trying to lap Mazepin at exactly the same place that Verstappen did on the previous lap. So it's swinging back and forth as we watch. Fernando Alonso on Antonio Giovinazzi, under braking, goes way too deep, Fernando. It was a bit optimistic, but you know what? He leaves the track, comes back on the track, and still might find himself ahead of that Alfa Romeo, and he does. Fernando Alonso up into 11th. Did he leave the track and gain an advantage, or was all fair in that particular battle?
Well, yes, he did, didn't he? Of course. I don't want to be anti-Fernando today, because I love him to bits and I admire him so much, but yeah, I mean, he just braked 50 metres too late, didn't he? There we go. I mean, that's not going to make the apex in a month of Sundays, is it? So,
oh, yes.
Not for long, I don't think. But let's see.
Yeah, just clipped, didn't he, the curb at the rear of his tyre, and that didn't help him under braking, but came back in a very nice place.
Come on, guys, you overtook me.
And Antonio Giovinazzi, one of 3 drivers to finish every race in 2021, not overly happy with it. Here's Daniel Ricciardo ahead of Carlos Sainz, and there's DRS for Sainz down that back straight.
Indeed, the car looked a little bit loose at the back, didn't it? The Ferrari, as he came off the turn 11 hairpin there. A lot of cars struggling for traction there. I'm pretty sure they've had to support the cars on the suspension for the bumps, and also to make sure they're not literally smashing the front wings and the under trays of the cars to bits on you know, what's in Formula 1 terms a pretty bumpy track. But I don't think anybody's complaining too much about the bumps, although it will be resurfaced for the MotoGP boys if they're coming back.
I would imagine so. The stewards have noted that incident between Alonso and Giovinazzi. Doesn't mean they're investigating it, but they have at least noted it, and they're looking at the possibility of a further investigation. There's Max Verstappen, and the difference between his lap times and Lewis Hamilton's on the last 4 laps. Verstappen, who came here to COTA having only led 2 laps around this racetrack before, but this season has been very different for him. So far, before the start of this race, he led 469 laps this season. The rest of the field combined had led 465. So Verstappen has way more experience at leading a race in 2021, and he's out there using that experience with about a 5.7 second gap to Hamilton. Hamilton's only really closed that down.
So, Michael, can I just confirm we can overtake off the track if we're going around the outside of another car, yeah?
No, you can't overtake off the track.
Well, that's what Raikkonen's just done.
Understand.
So it's okay?
No, it's not okay.
But it's okay for Raikkonen?
No, it's not okay for anyone.
So that is Michael Massey, the race director, and Alan Permain, sporting director at Alpine.
Yeah, that's Alan trying to head off what he thinks is coming next. But they're different circumstances.
Yeah. So it's okay to overtake off the track, but Kimi was forced wide by Fernando in the first place. Yeah. Fernando wasn't necessarily forced wide by Giovinazzi, is what the stewards might say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. Fernando just didn't break in time, did he? But that's for me, they're different incidents. But let's see. Look at the angle of the cars. I think that's fine. You know, Kimi did his best to stay on the track. He was getting a fair old shove. That's different to just lunging and not braking and then getting the high ground off.
But that's Alpine on this occasion logic against what is logic and universal logic, shall we say?
That's Alan's job. Alan's job as TM is to team managers is to head that sort of thing off. So let's see what the stewards say. Michael Massey is the race director. He is not the stewards. No. He can ask the stewards to look at things. It's the stewards that will make the decisions with copious amounts of information available to them and camera angles, and they'll come back and make a decision.
So I was just saying before that radio message, Hamilton's only real inroads into Verstappen's lead recently has been when they were lapping Nikita Mazepin. Now, they're not lapping anybody on this particular lap, Verstappen or Hamilton, but Hamilton is reducing the arrears somewhat. He's gone so far about 0.6 of a second quicker on this lap. Is this Verstappen starting to struggle a bit on those hard compound tyres? Is this Hamilton finding a bit more pace on his tyres that are 3 laps fresher? Or is what going on? We don't know because we're not in the cars, but there's definitely inroads being made by Hamilton here.
Well, Christian said he's managing his tyres well, so let's assume that's what he's still doing. It doesn't. 5.4 is fine. You've got. It's now down to 4.7. What Hamilton wants to do is get into the undercut range, isn't it, within a couple of seconds and start putting them under pressure. If Max has got any speed left, they need to start applying it like now.
Hamilton is on the charge, and if you're just joining us, if you're a Sky Q customer or Sky Glass customer and you want to see what's happened so far alongside the live action, press your red button and you can continue to do so.
Been requested to give the place back to Giovinazzi, or we will get a 5-second penalty.
Not looking forward to this reply.
Yeah, so Alonso, you've got to give the place back. Come on, we're past the watershed. Why have they not given the reply?
I think the beep machine's probably overheated. They couldn't play it out.
4.7 seconds, the difference between Verstappen and Hamilton, as Giovinazzi is given that place back by Fernando Alonso. We can go to race control. Paul di Resta.
Yeah, Red Bull's already been on the telephone to Max about Hamilton's last lap time and just saying, look, he's used a lot less tyre saving in Sector 1, that's where the lap time came from. So it shows it's clearly a race of degradation and both guys just not want to show the cards too early.
Yeah, and Max, of course, has got to recover the equivalent of 3 laps of life in his tyres because they pulled the trigger early, as Christian put it.
It's an absorbing race, this, and it's going to build to quite the crescendo if it carries on in the pattern that we're seeing emerge currently. This is how Fernando Alonso gave that place back to Antonio Giovinazzi. I've never seen him go that slowly through turn 15. And he went slow enough for that to be a comfortable exchange of places. The Ferrari and McLaren scrap continues apace. Leclerc holding off Ricciardo, holding off Sainz, holding off Norris. 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, not separated by much on the track. Here's Karun.
Yeah, that's right, Carlos Sainz on this set of tyres. Now he's got rid of that first set of those annoying red soft tyres. He's really found his rhythm here, and he's closed right up to the back of Daniel Ricciardo. That's going to be tasty crofty in the final part of this race. Don't forget, we're not been halfway through this Grand Prix, guys. Extraordinary stuff.
Here we go again, Karun. It's Alonso Giovinazzi, part 2, and this time it's Antonio Giovinazzi that is forced wide, and as he comes back on the track, he gives a little shove towards the Alpine, and Alonso biding his time, gets on the power early, goes a little shove towards Giovinazzi. Does he stay in that 11th place? Yes, the Alfa Romeo does. Fighting for his Formula 1 future, the Italian driver, up against Fernando Alonso, who'll definitely be back next season. And he'll definitely start the next lap behind Giovinazzi once again. Saved the place by being off the road there, didn't he, Giovinazzi? Wouldn't want to be an Alfa Romeo salesman in Spain next week. I don't think they'll be that busy. Karun, back to you.
Thanks, Robbie. I think the big question now, guys, is that when do they pull the trigger on the second stops, isn't it? You know, as I said, we're not yet halfway through, so you've got to be into the 30s, you'd imagine, before Mercedes can pull that trigger. They want to get Lewis up close to Max, though, before they have that chance.
That was a lovely little scrap there between Giovinazzi and Alonso. He's learnt well from the first one that elbows must be got out at all times.
And Max Verstappen now saying out there that he's struggling with the rear tyre. Now let's see, did Giovinazzi... No, he's let him through, hasn't he?
That was the replay. Yeah, that was the replay.
Yeah.
Then you have to give the position to Alonso.
Yeah.
Oh, he pushed me out.
Give position back now. No discussion, give position back.
Yeah, that's what we were seeing. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. He saved the position only by being completely off track. What goes around comes around.
Yeah, so Alonso gave it back the first time, Giovinazzi gave it back the second time, and guess what? Fernando Alonso is now significantly faster on the track, and I don't think they're going to be exchanging places for a few more laps to come. Stewards might have noted it, but it's already been dealt with. Behind Giovinazzi, there's George Russell. I haven't seen him for a while. Against Sebastian Vettel, this is the battle for 13th place. Russell starting 20th in the race. Sebastian Vettel actually starting ahead of him, but the Williams got some good pace against the Aston as it stands so far. Vettel on the medium tyre, George Russell on the hard compound tyre. Vettel absolutely chomping at the bit to get past George Russell here, and round the outside of turn 16. Has he made that move stick? He has, you know. Fantastic stuff by Sebastian Vettel as they head left-handed into turn 19. The Aston Martin's ahead. Well, George Russell will be looking at that thinking, well, maybe next year I might have a bit of a car advantage as I go to Mercedes. Wish I had the car advantage against Aston Martin this afternoon.
If George breached track limits in 19 there, it's the second time, I believe. Can't see the other one because there's so many on the screen now, but yeah, he ended up quite wide in 19, but nice move from Sebastian. Very nice move.
We were talking undercuts and potential stopping early to get ahead of your rival. Lando Norris has just been told by Will Joseph on the radio, Lando, this is where we need your talent to shine. I'm going for it, says Lando. I think they want full beans from Lando Norris to close in on Carlos Sainz and maybe put the undercut on Sainz for the second round of pit stops, which might not be that far away. In fact, for Latifi and for Ocon, who stopped early after incidents on the first lap, the second pit stop has already come.
Hamilton now only 2.7 seconds adrift of Verstappen. At this rate, he'll be with him in 5-6 laps. So it doesn't appear. Max has done a personal best first sector, though. That's full of corners.
I think Verstappen came across Nicholas Latifi at just the wrong moment as well. You know how he lost time trying to lap Nikita Mazepin? I think he lost time trying to lap Latifi before Latifi's pit stop. Paul at Race Control has been monitoring the on-boards and said that it took him a while to get past. Either way, he's a couple of tenths up in the first sector on this latest lap, but that is the gap now. There was 6.7 seconds at the end of the first round of pit stops, and Hamilton has reduced it quite significantly. Giovinazzi's having a busy afternoon. Fernando Alonso, 2 World Championships. Sebastian Vettel, 4 World Championships. He's putting up a fight against some very experienced men. And he's now coming into the pits to bail out of that scrap, just when it was getting interesting.
Seb on his way down the pit straight then. So Verstappen's going to start coming up to Stroll, Russell, Vettel, then Alonso. A little bit later on, the 2 leaders now, really, you've got to say. There's, let's see, in fact, Max is quicker on this lap so far. He's 6 tenths up on the current lap, goes over the line with a 40.6. Lewis with a 41.2, stays at 6 tenths.
Virtual safety car. This could make things interesting. How long are we going to have a virtual safety car for? The field is effectively neutralised now as the drivers all drive to a set pace. They have to reduce their speed whilst a marshal, well done sir, comes on the track to pick up a piece of debris.
So that'll go now, then. So safety car ending. Sorry, Crofty.
No, as I was going to say, if it lasted that much longer, we might see some pit stops, because pitting behind the virtual safety car saves you a bit of time. You don't lose as much time for your pit stop. But Hamilton and Verstappen had already gone past, and we're going green now.
There shouldn't be any gains. Now, Lewis had a back marker of Mick Schumacher between him and Verstappen.
No, Giovinazzi.
You're right, Giovinazzi, sorry. But anyway, a back mark he just had to navigate. But strictly speaking, it shouldn't change anything. The gap should be the same. But it depends a little bit how you get in and out of it. The system, remember, he complained about his drink system not working, going to the grid, or leaking indeed.
Yeah, Sergio Perez on a very hot day in this part of Texas. He's not going to get the, the scalding hot refreshment of whatever drink is coming out.
I can't help but think that with Giovinazzi to pass, that Max's lead's much more than 2.7 now, surely, isn't it? Well, a bit more than 2.7 anyway. It looks like Max has gained, although Lewis has done a better middle sector.
Well, first sector, Verstappen gained 8 tenths on Lewis Hamilton. Middle sector, Lewis Hamilton gained 7 tenths on Max. It was a tenth of a second difference. But yeah, I think what you're trying to say is Hamilton, when the light went green, came across Giovinazzi at the wrong time.
Yeah. So let's see what the gap is. It was 2.7.
Now 3.2.
Yeah, so he did gain a little bit in there.
And it's these little margins that could very much decide this race. So if you're sitting watching this race in the garages at Red Bull or Mercedes, you know that you've got a very important part to play too. And we've seen plenty of problems with pit stops since the rules were changed slightly to allow for more human input and not just rely on a system giving you the green light. The human beings have to do it. Some tenths of a second could decide this one.
Yeah, Perez needs to find some space, some pace, because quite soon he'll be more than a pit stop behind Hamilton, and Red Bull desperately need to keep him strategically.
Yeah, I don't know where he is strategically at the moment, other than running in 3rd place, which...
And life for this set of tyres, better than expected.
Which is interesting news for the rest of the field too. Perez is in 3rd place. What he is doing is adding to Red Bull's ambitions of reaching 200 podium finishes by the end of this race.
It really annoys me when an engineer tells a driver how his tyres feel and not the other way around, but they've got all the data.
Yes, quite. Paul, to you.
Talking about tyres, Max has been told free to push. Go for it.
In which case, then, let's see what the difference is going to be. 2.7 seconds, though, the difference between Verstappen and Hamilton. And we think he's coming into the pits. Certainly into the pits. Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. Verstappen is going to make his pit stop too. That's why he was told to push, because it was the last lap on those particular tyres. 26 laps to go in this race. Verstappen makes his 2nd pit stop.
Yeah, it's kind of okay, wasn't it?
2.8 seconds. It's round. Yeah, for a man who's had 5 pit stops under 2 seconds this season, it's slow, but they are a bit slower since Belgium.
Yeah, well, since the new, when it's got to be much more manual.
And Lewis will go target +6, target +6.
Going long.
So, going long, so that at the end of the race, he'll be on much fresher tyres and trying to chase Verstappen down. And we've seen him do that before, and we've seen him do it successfully before, and we've seen him just fall a little bit short in the past as well. But Mercedes are doing a very different strategy to Red Bull this afternoon.
And he's got the straight line speed down the back straight, hasn't he, has Lewis Hamilton, if he comes back into play. So it's a real cat and mouse game, isn't it, between Red Bull and Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, problem at the right rear for Carlos Sainz, and that's lost him a bit of time, and that won't help him in his scrap with Ricciardo and Norris.
Yeah, and he had a miserable pit stop in Istanbul as well, didn't he, last time out?
He did that.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, two Red Bulls running neck and neck, Martin Brundle, but that's how far Sergio Perez had dropped back from the pace, because Verstappen has had one extra pit stop and he overtakes his teammate into turn 12 at the end of the back straight. And I think we can go to race control. Paul Di Resta, have you got something for us?
No, nothing. I was just thinking that's quite early for Max to stop. You know, he's been told he's got to extend 8 more laps on the radio, and he was getting that information from the team. So I think that's quite punchy, to be honest. I think going back to what Martin was saying, you know, Lewis is going to make an impact at the end.
Punchy, and we don't know at the moment. Is it the right decision, the wrong decision? But
okay, Sainz had a slightly slow stop, so push. We can box this lap and cover.
Yeah, McLaren think they can stay ahead and cut off the threat of that Ferrari undercut. But I just wonder, have they asked Verstappen to do just a little bit too much at the end of this race, Martin?
It seems a long way out, doesn't it? As obviously they're getting ready now for Sergio Perez as well to put hard tyres on for the first time. He's gone medium, use medium, new hard then. And meanwhile, Hamilton does the fastest lap of the race. So he's found some pace in there as well. Verstappen 17 seconds behind him. It's 20 seconds to stop. So Verstappen will end up with track position. But will he end up in front when it matters most? When that little funny piece of white and black cloth is waved at you.
Ricciardo into the pits, out of the pits, ahead of Carlos Sainz. Norris comes into the pits and will eventually leave the pits. Will he be ahead of Carlos Sainz, who's making his way down the main straight? You can see the Ferrari in the distance. There's Ricciardo. They've covered off Carlos Sainz with Ricciardo. Norris will be a lot closer to Carlos Sainz when he leaves the pits. He had a slow stop too. Down to you, Karun.
Yeah, Coffee, I think the point here is that Red Bull have learned from Barcelona earlier this season, where they didn't pit, they didn't pull the trigger, they didn't pit, and they lost their Grand Prix. Here they've decided they want to keep track position. I just had a quick word with one of the Pirelli engineers here, and their prediction, guys, on the hard tyre was you can do up to 40 laps. So there isn't a wear issue. It's a question of how fast can Max go versus a Hamilton in a Mercedes coming on fresh tyres in the last 15 laps.
And of course now they're getting down the fuel load as well. I talked about at the beginning, well over 100 kilograms of fuel at the start of the race. And we can quite clearly see they're more than halfway through that now, which helps the tyres a lot. The track keeps rubbering in as well for good measure. Verstappen is going fast, but it's a long way out. He's got a long way to go on those tyres. He will have track position.
So let's look at this. Gap at the moment, 16.5 seconds. You lose 20 seconds or so for a pit stop here. So if they pitted now, Hamilton comes out behind Verstappen by about 3 seconds, say 3.5 seconds, depending on the stop. Now that would be much better than the deficit that he had from the first round of pit stops. But how much longer does he want to go? 6 laps the target, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, target plus 6, indeed. But I guess what Red Bull were concerned about is if Mercedes suddenly surprised them, because they were pretty close to the undercut range, weren't they, at 2.7, 2.6 seconds. They were nervous of being exposed to an undercut and then losing that track position.
Christian Horner is with us. The question we're trying to ask on behalf of everyone watching this, Christian, is do you think you might just have pulled Max in a little early and you might suffer towards the end of this race?
Well, this race is all going to be about the last 5 laps, so it's going to be fascinating. So let's see how it pans out.
Were you trying to cover off an undercut, Christian, or why the stop then? Because his pace seemed all right.
Yeah, his pace was just starting to drop off, and you know, anything within 3 seconds, you know, got the car behind's got a free undercut. So you know, we were just covering off that option.
Toto Wolff's just been on the radio to Lewis Hamilton saying, Lewis, we are racing for the win here. You say it's all down to the last 5 laps. How finely balanced do you think this is?
I think it's very finely balanced, so it's all going to be about the next few laps.
Can't wait. I think your foot's going to be tapping at more revs per minute than it's ever tapped before, isn't it, Christian?
Absolutely. Let's see from 50 on.
Thanks ever so much.
See you later.
Cheers, thank you. 33 laps. We're on lap 33, out of 56. One stop for Hamilton, two stops for Verstappen. Hamilton back in the lead again. Fastest lap of the race has gone to Sergio Perez so far. Charles Leclerc doing a very nice job for Ferrari, and a decent job done by his crew in return. Has come in for his second pit stop. He'll be out on the track ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who has just stopped the once in this race. Hamilton and Bottas, and also Tsunoda, Raikkonen and Vettel, and Mick Schumacher and Lance Stroll, the cars that are yet to stop for a second time.
Yeah, Ferrari then tactically keeping themselves ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And as you say, it's only stopped the once, so his tyres will be getting a little bit fed up with life. It's coming before the end.
Gap now 16 seconds or so. 4/10 Verstappen was faster than Hamilton on that previous lap. Get the feeling in about 4 laps time, if Hamilton pits, he will have less of an arrears than after that first round of pit stops.
So just about okay.
Yeah, copy that, Lewis. We'll still be target +6, maybe 7 if we can manage it.
And it's all about just give Lewis as fresh a tyre as possible for the remaining stages of this race, and then let him go out and see what the pace is in the car. This is why two-stop strategies are always a really pleasant, welcoming thing in Formula One, because there's an awful lot of variables, and we're all kept on our toes, and we're all guessing on the pit wall and here in the commentary box, and you on your sofas at home.
It's got a bit of Barcelona about it, hasn't it, in terms of Mercedes outsmarted Red Bull. Red Bull returned the compliment in Paul Ricard at the French Grand Prix. Christian didn't seem unduly alarmed, did he, by this? And obviously, let's see what the gap. I mean, at the moment, Max is 15.7 behind. It's a 20-second stop. So there's no jeopardy now in a Red Bull stop. There is in a Mercedes stop, but Perez is out of play now.
There is Lewis Hamilton ahead of Yuki Tsunoda and of Kimi Raikkonen, ahead because he's lapping those cars. Everyone has been lapped now, down to 12th place. Don't forget, of course, Hamilton and Mercedes know just what it's like for a lead to change hands a few laps from the end here, because 2019 on lap 52, Bottas passed Hamilton, who was struggling with tyre wear because they didn't quite get his stops right and his strategy right on the day. So if you learn from your mistakes in the way that Mercedes claim we learn from our mistakes, you might put them as favourites to win here.
Sergio Perez has been told to go for it. We want track position over Lewis, but I mean, that would be something spectacular. He's 37 seconds behind at the moment. That's almost 2 pit stops.
Perez is going for it. Fastest lap of the race, although Leclerc on a new fresh set of tyres is making a challenge for that himself, running in 4th.
And what that, of course, does is takes the World Championship point away from Hamilton, who I believe had fastest lap up until that point.
Yep.
So it's a job of stopping the other team getting the 1 point. 1 point might make all the difference this season.
Quite. So we've got 6 races, 25 points for the win, plus another 6 available points for a fastest lap, plus 3 points maximum available for the sprint. And our next sprint qualifying, the last one of the season, will be in Brazil in a couple of races' time. As we look to the hairpin, and we see on track the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, and Yuki Tsunoda is about to go for the overtake, and that looked fairly easy for Yuki Tsunoda, who's stopped twice in this race. Stroll has only stopped the once. Finally, Valtteri Bottas comes in for his latest pit stop, and a 2.3 second stop was fairly neat from those in the Mercedes garage. So Tsunoda then ahead of Stroll, and back into the points again. Stroll's lost out to Kimi Raikkonen too. Raikkonen up to 11th, and there's Fernando Alonso waiting in 13th. But Stroll, like Hamilton, will be hoping that he can get those places back towards the end of this race with much more grip.
Ferrari, McLaren, Ferrari, well now Mercedes and then McLaren. So in that massive scrap those two great teams are having, it's advantage Ferrari this afternoon at the moment.
And I'm looking at the lap times here. Last lap, round about a second difference between Hamilton and Verstappen, in Verstappen's favour. Hamilton's tyres are starting to drop off a bit more significantly now. So how much longer do Mercedes leave him out there? 20 laps to go. Is this roundabout the right time as we ride on board with Kimi Räikkönen? What a wonderful sequence of corners this is.
Tsunoda's car looks like a V8 stock car, doesn't it, with that banner above him. It's great. At least we know who's there, and it's still him. And you're not allowed to cut those curbs too much. Otherwise, will be reported to the stewards. You're not allowed to cut turn 9 at all. But yeah, really good. And Tsunoda will, if he scores a World Championship point this afternoon, he'll work very hard for it. He's ridden well.
Certainly will. Everyone's having to work hard in the heat here in Texas at the Circuit of the Americas.
Verstappen predicted a 40.5. He's 6 seconds inside our window.
Okay, explain that one then, Martin. 6 seconds inside our window.
Well, it means that we can basically, and Lewis hasn't reacted to that, or not that we've heard, it basically means that when you've got fresh tyres at the end, that's what you've got to find. That's the kind of advantage you need to come up with. I don't think it'd be a problem in terms of closing, but as the great Murray Walker would say, you know, catching's one thing, passing is quite another.
Very much so. Even on a track that was ranked 3rd highest for overtakes the last time we came here, 3rd highest in the 2019 season. It's still one thing to try and get past. The United States Grand Prix here at the Circuit of the Americas, and the gap now 12.5 seconds Hamilton has over Verstappen as we head down to Karun.
Yeah, Crofty, just want to give a shout out to Daniel Ricciardo because he's having a great race here. 9 seconds at the moment ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, and it's been a tough season for Ricciardo, hasn't it? How many times have we seen and talked about the season? He's, you know, 3-4 tenths down, but all through this weekend he's looked quick, he's looked competitive, and in the race he has so far delivered very well, and this is what McLaren need in the run to Abu Dhabi in that fight for the constructors.
Yeah, it is. This will please McLaren a lot. I was talking to Andreas Seidel today, and he was saying there's a bit of mojo, a bit of Texas mojo about Daniel Ricciardo this weekend. We really ought to come here and give him more brisket every week as we see everyone enjoying Texas. George Lucas coming back to the track as well. We have seen George Lucas at many a Formula One track in the past. Now, if he was any good at making movies, he could make a really good movie out this 2021 season, couldn't he? Star Wars 8.
Somebody will. Depends. Right now, yeah, 12.5 seconds behind is Verstappen, so that gives him a 7.5 second gap, providing Mercedes get the pit stop right ahead of Hamilton. It all looks comfortable. We're about to get on with it in terms of Lewis's stop. To remind you then, Max stopped on lap 29.
So on lap 37, Lewis Hamilton is coming into the pits. So it was target plus, what, another 8 in terms of the difference between Verstappen and Hamilton. Pit lane limiter is pressed. It's 80 kilometres an hour, and he'll stop at his marks, and he'll take off one set of hard tyres and put another set of hard tyres on. 2.4 seconds.
4 tenths quicker than Verstappen and Red Bull.
And when you're going to need to overtake Verstappen at the end of the race, that could be a decent advantage for Hamilton too. Verstappen goes through turn 1 in the lead, then Hamilton comes out in 2nd place. So the lead has changed hands once again, and now to the checkered flag. Hamilton has got the chase on. He's got to make up 7.8 seconds, and he's got to get past his rival.
I'm coming to get you, but how hard has Verstappen been pushing his tyres? He just did a personal best, 40 flat, which is a very good time. Indeed, what is fastest lap so far in the Grand Prix?
Perez.
39.5, so Verstappen showing very good pace, just half second off the quickest lap, and 40 flat for Leclerc as well. So if Verstappen's got lots of grip and lots of speed, he'll soon have to deliver it because Hamilton will be coming at him.
And there'll be a few back markers in the way too. These back markers are Tsunoda and Räikkönen and Alonso, and just behind them are Giovinazzi, and just behind him is Max Verstappen. You'll be able to see him, possibly coming into the shot, but not quite. There's a long way to go here. There's a lot happened so far. If you're just joining us and you're a Sky Q and Sky Glass customer, you can watch highlights of the race alongside the live action by pressing the red button. What a great day of sport it has been so far, unless your football team's lost. Mine didn't, but what a great evening and thrilling conclusion this could be to the end of the United States Grand Prix.
It's a good point you make about the traffic. Giovinazzi should clear the way quite quickly, but when you've got 3 drivers fighting hard for the final World Championship point, that's Tsunoda, Räikkönen, Alonso, they're more reluctant to yield, and sometimes they don't see you quite as well. Although, of course, the black flags, they've got blue lights on their dashboard as well. They don't want to just get out of the way. They're in a big scrap for a World Championship point. So as Verstappen approaches them, he hasn't got through Giovinazzi yet in turn 2.
Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc running in 4th ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Big gap between Leclerc and Ricciardo. Sainz is catching Daniel Ricciardo by about half a second a lap. Valtteri Bottas is gaining on Carlos Sainz behind him, but Lando Norris isn't too far away either. It's all about the last 3 laps. That's what Lewis Hamilton is being told. Down to you, Karun Chandok.
Yeah, Crofty, just looking at the gaps now, they've told Hamilton to bring the tyres in gently, so don't expect the gap to come down dramatically in the first couple of laps, but it's after that the gap will, potentially come down. The reason for that is the more gently you bring the tyres in early on in the stint, it'll pay dividends with longevity later on.
Excellent. Thanks, Karun.
It took a long time to get past Giovinazzi there for Max Verstappen, and I'm expecting him to take a bit of pain on this lap with the gap to Hamilton. So Hamilton 3/10 faster in the first sector. Let's see what he is. 4/10 faster in the second sector already on this lap.
Which doesn't mean he is overworking the tyres. It just means that he's got a bit of pace that Max Verstappen can't match for one reason or another. And that could be because of Antonio Giovinazzi just being in the wrong place at the wrong time for Verstappen to make the lap.
Yeah, Mazepin's pitted. So once Verstappen clears Alonso, Raikkonen and Tsunoda, he's got a lot of space in front of him then. Probably won't meet too much more traffic before the end of the race. So critical now to clear these next 3 cars. And Vettel pops out of the pits just in front of Hamilton as well for good measure. Presumably will yield at the top of the hill. Where is he?
He's there somewhere. About 3/4 of that main straight separating Verstappen and Hamilton. Everyone has pitted twice in this race now.
Yeah. It's all about traffic, isn't it? The few tenths and herding of the tyres following other cars, and where do they get out of the way in the middle? And indeed, Vettel is in front of him, and he's got to follow him through this snake. And for Vettel, it's like, okay, well, where do I get out of the way? I want fresh tyres. So once again, then Lewis, he can let him go down the inside of the hairpin, and he hasn't.
But doesn't Hamilton now get DRS going down this back straight because he was within a second of Sebastian Vettel through that detection zone? Yes, he does. That compensates for Hamilton being held up and gives him 14 miles an hour extra top speed by the end of the straight. It's all these fine margins that the teams will be hoping go their way between now and the checkered flag.
Yeah, and Lewis was even Stevens through the middle sector, 40.2. He lost 3/10 in the first sector, which is where he was directly behind Vettel.
Never finished outside the top 4 here at the Circuit of the Americas. Lewis Hamilton, he is a 6-time winner on US soil. 5 in Austin, 1 in Indianapolis. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, has never won here in Austin. Twice has finished on the podium. Once finished in the top 3 and had to give the place back to Kimi Raikkonen because he passed him illegally on the last lap.
New personal best for Max Verstappen. Hamilton then, a new personal best. 3/10 faster again. Game on.
Has he now brought those tyres in, nursed them, looked after them, cajoled them into a decent temperature, and can he now let it loose? Is the rodeo about to start here at COTA without the aid of a lasso? Can Lewis Hamilton reel Max Verstappen in the closing 15 laps of this race?
And Verstappen has caught Raikkonen, Tsunoda at the tail end of the first sector as well. So he'll hope he can get past them from the hairpin of 11 down to 12 cleanly. He's right on them.
He certainly is. Hamilton needs to clear Giovinazzi, but he's not within DRS range, and Giovinazzi's not getting the blue flag signal as yet to let Lewis Hamilton pass. 7.3 seconds, the gap there. Current tyres, everyone on the hard tyre, all down to Alonso on the medium, Ocon, Mick Schumacher and Mazepin medium 2.
Now Verstappen still following Raikkonen, Tsunoda through another twisty section of the track. It's costing him time.
And while all that's happening, Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz currently 5th and 6th, not separated by much, as you can see. Sainz has got the bit between his teeth, 100% point scoring record here at COTA, and he can see Daniel Ricciardo ahead of him.
And Verstappen still behind Raikkonen and Tsunoda as Hamilton is smashing the sector times and about to do the fastest lap of the Grand Prix.
That gap that was over 8 seconds, 15 laps to go now, it's 6.5 seconds. Hamilton is on the charge. Verstappen being compromised slightly by back markers, hasn't got the pace of that Mercedes, and Mercedes got the strategy absolutely perfectly. Meanwhile, there goes Carlos Sainz trying down the inside on Daniel Ricciardo. He was about a car length and a half too far back to make the move stick.
Yeah, best part of 2 seconds Hamilton took out of Verstappen. Verstappen is still to clear Tsunoda through Raikkonen now. It's cost him a lot of time. Hamilton, though, following Giovinazzi through first sector.
And, of course, all the trouble Max Verstappen's had trying to lap the back markers. Hamilton's got to go through that pain in a few moments' time, too. Paul, the rest to you.
I'm not sure. You might see the radio come up, but they either say you're doing too much too early or don't do too much too early, because they're seeing that pace is absolutely rapid.
Okay, apologies. We need to retire the car. Box now.
Copy, that was the problem?
It's something at the back of the car. I'll explain more when you're back in. Apologies.
Mechanical retirement for Esteban Ocon, second driver out of this race. Pierre Gasly retiring too with mechanical problems. That is a disappointment for Esteban, it really is.
Yeah, black and white flag then for Raikkonen for not getting out of the way of the leader. That's a warning about your driving standards. And still Verstappen is behind Tsunoda.
Well, Yuki Tsunoda, we know, is a difficult man to pass when you're racing against him. Verstappen's coming up now to lap Tsunoda. He's just trying to work his way through the field a bit. While all this is happening, Mazepin saying his feet are burning in the car. He's suffering out there too.
But Tsunoda in the sister team should just be letting him through. But not because he's in the sister team, because he'll have had blue flags waving at him. So that's they're showing him. Anyway, let's see how many he's had. But that's cost Red Bull dearly.
That has taken 4 seconds out of Verstappen's advantage. Hamilton's cleared Giovinazzi. Sainz is trying to clear Ricciardo. He's going the long way round and they touch. As we now break away and see what happened, they definitely made contact. Daniel Ricciardo is still ahead of Carlos Sainz, but to what degree did they make contact, and is there damage on either car? But that got way too close for comfort for both drivers.
And Bottas behind is faster as well, catching the pair of them for good measure.
In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren, as it stands at the moment, would have a 1.5 point advantage over Ferrari. This means so much in terms of prize money at the end of the season, because it's the Constructors' Championship that the dollars are paid out. Or euros or pounds or luncheon vouchers, I forget how they pay it out these days, but it's a 1.5 points between them as it stands, so Ricciardo needs that place. Let's have a look then at what happened. Carlos Sainz trying to go the long way round on the outside, and that's where they touched.
Got a bit dirty. He did that on purpose, guys.
Understood. Reporting.
Did what on purpose, Martin, and was it that dirty?
I don't think it didn't look too blatant to me. Carlos sort of taking a bit of a lunge around the outside there. You're bound to... no, I don't think I saw a lot of relative movement. We need to see the steering already, see if Daniel gave it a bit of left-hand lock and a right-hander, but I don't think the stewards will be too upset with that. Let's see.
You can see Valtteri Bottas in the background trying to join in on this fight. He has got more pace. Meanwhile, Hamilton has cleared Kimi Raikkonen. He's right behind Yuki Tsunoda, and the gap 4.1 seconds between Verstappen and Hamilton.
And we saw the front wing end fence there of Sainz just touching the ground. So a bit of damage on the front wing for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. That's going to hurt him.
It certainly is. Over the bumps here, sometimes it's difficult to know if it is damaged or not, or if it's just a bump that's just throwing the car upwards and downwards a little more dramatically than the engineers would like. Hamilton's going to get DRS behind Yuki Tsunoda to lap him down the back straight, which is just where they are currently. DRS wide open for Carlos Sainz behind Daniel Ricciardo. Not gaining enough down the straight to warrant a move, and Valtteri Bottas very encouraged by that scrap, because he's getting closer metre by metre.
Quite a lot of clear track in front of them. Hamilton now directly behind Verstappen in terms of track position, and surely it's now advantage Mercedes and Hamilton for this Grand Prix.
Well, between now and the checkered flag, Martin, there shouldn't be any back markers that have any interference whatsoever on this scrap. We're on lap 44. Car number 44 is just under 4 seconds, fraction over 4 seconds now, behind car number 33, the leader, Max Verstappen. He's led more laps than anyone else this season. He leads the championship, but will he still be leading the championship by the checkered flag? Everything is in the balance here.
Verstappen a personal best, but still over 4/10 of a second slower than Hamilton. Hamilton's flying along, and he did get a lovely DRS pass on Tsunoda down the back straight. The traffic has not fallen well for the young Dutchman, but now it's about how much speed he's got, and if Hamilton gets behind him, how much grip he's got.
0.4 of a second a lap would do it for Lewis Hamilton. He'd give him a couple of laps to try and make that move. Getting into the last 6 races of the season, Martin, for a man like Max Verstappen, who never led a single-seater world championship, let alone a Formula 1 world championship, how difficult is it at this stage to try and keep your calm and your composure when you know that the odds are maybe at this stage stacked a little against you?
Yeah, I don't think Max gets quite punchy on the radio sometimes, doesn't he? He certainly gets his elbows out on the racetrack. I don't think he's a guy to get too frightened or pressurized by situations, but Hamilton's just got more speed than him right now with those fresher tyres.
On board with Valtteri Bottas in his last 6 races with Mercedes before he goes to Alfa Romeo for next season. We'll have the advantage of a Ferrari engine potentially in the back of that Alfa Romeo, and he'd like the advantage of less dirty air coming off that Ferrari engine as he goes through the S's. That
was a great example of just what it means to a driver to follow another driver closely. We're hoping next year's cars are significantly better in that respect. But it appears that from the simulator, they're not a whole lot slower.
Won't get too much dirty air down the straight, though. We'll get the Ferrari punching a hole in the air that he can slip his way into and increase his speed down the straight. And as he does that, his teammate now 3.2 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Half a second Hamilton was faster on the previous lap than the race leader. Lap 46 out of 56.
Yeah, because if Hamilton gets behind Verstappen with the aid of DRS, which is well over 20 kilometers per hour advantage, you're pointing out 14 miles an hour advantage, plus the slipstream, plus the Mercedes is faster anyway, that'll be indefensible.
Yeah. Boom, and Hamilton will be in the lead, but he's got to get there first. Paul di Resta. Oh, I don't think we're hearing you, Paul. Is your mic on?
Is it working now?
It is now.
And what Red Bull is telling Max is just make sure you've got enough rear tyres left to get out the zones with the DRS is active. Forget about the rest because he won't be able to follow as we saw earlier in the race.
Correct. Sergio Perez, meanwhile, in no man's land, on his own, in 3rd place currently. Behind him, Charles Leclerc has a massive advantage over Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo has a decent advantage over Carlos Sainz now after the two got very close. And Sainz is struggling with damage to the right-hand underside of his end plates.
Yeah, luckily it's not a structural problem with the main flap, is it? And the various bits and pieces, but he will lose overall downforce with that, with the front skirt.
10 laps to go. Mercedes need Bottas to get past Carlos Sainz.
What is normally the pace advantage you need to pass here?
I think regardless of that pace delta, Max, I think the key will be just have enough rear tyres for the DRS zones.
Giampiero Lambiase, Max's race engineer, telling Max what Paul di Resta was telling us a few moments ago. I was just saying, Bottas getting past Sainz. The way this stands in the Constructors' Championship, it's not been a bad day so far for Red Bull, but a couple of places to change will leave Mercedes a lot happier as they bid for yet another Constructors' title.
Yeah, I think Red Bull will wish they had gone a bit longer on those tyres, so they're not quite so exposed, but Verstappen punching in personal best, but they're nowhere near fast enough. The answer is 1.3 seconds is what you have to be faster than the driver ahead for a normal overtake. But I think it's all about straight line speed. So they're quite rightly saying to Max, get off the turn 11 hairpin, get off the final corner, and you can still make the difference there.
Bottas just had a little look there on Carlos Sainz, just going towards turn 1, which is a great corner for overtaking because the slope just gives you that extra few meters of late braking. But then if you do get it a bit too late, you get a bit floaty going over the crest and you can easily lock up. But it's a wonderful corner, and that's why you see so many fans queuing from early morning here to get the prime spot at the top of the hill.
Charles Leclerc's a long way up the road, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's doing a great job in fourth place again for Ferrari. They're 8 seconds behind Perez. But now Perez is 28 seconds off the lead of this pair, who are just lifting themselves to a whole new plane.
They are. And the best thing for us, Martin, that plane will take off and land in Mexico, and we'll have another 5 races potentially of these two going at it. Charles Leclerc on his way to back-to-back fourth-place finishes in what would be his third fourth-place finish in 4 races. He's leading the way for Ferrari as well.
Cheer there for Red Bull. 39-1 Verstappen, 38-8 Hamilton. Still catching, but by lesser margin on the previous lap. And then he will. We don't think the Mercedes is that strong, do we, when it comes to following other cars? We saw it again with Bottas at the beginning, didn't we? So if Verstappen can release well, get good traction, good punch out of T11 and T20, he might be able to defend this.
Well, he was told, wasn't he, Lewis, down to the last 3 laps. That's what it's all going to come down to. And maybe in those last 3 laps you'll vote for driver of the day. Where my driver of the day will be going at the moment, we've seen some fairly good scraps.
So Hamilton could go away from here leading the World Championship again if he wins this. Verstappen could leave leading the championship by 13 points. This is a big turnaround, depending on what happens now.
At a racetrack that when we were last here, Lewis Hamilton won the World Championship in 2019, claimed it at COTA. He's done that in the past, did it last time out here. Has never won a World Championship, though, when he hasn't led going into the race in Austin.
Hamilton's going to be on getting DRS within 3 laps. He's going to be getting the rear wing open and cruising up to the back of this Red Bull, which I'd imagine he'll be treating, again, like the hind legs of a donkey.
So there's that swing that Martin was talking about. Verstappen, as it stands, would have a healthy lead. But it might be a lead for Lewis Hamilton come the checkered flag. Let's go to Sky Race Control. Paul de Resta.
Yeah, nothing to do with the championship battle of the first 2, Crofty. It's more about the last podium. Charles Leclerc, what a massive press he's putting on Sergio Perez at the moment. Well, outstanding.
He's got the gap down, hasn't he? 7.5 seconds now, the gap between Perez and Leclerc. I think did Perez stop before Leclerc? Has Perez got a slight tyre disadvantage? I think he did. So 2 laps before he made that stop, as a black and white flag is shown to Lance Stroll to try and keep within the track limits between now and the checkered flag. Well, maybe those 2 laps could give Charles Leclerc a bit of an advantage. Got a tall order to get past Sergio Perez, but might all come down to it. The gap now under 2 seconds, Martin.
Yeah, so Hamilton now getting into the turbulent air. He'll start to slide around a little bit more from the air discarded off the back of the Red Bull. And Red Bull wanted track position. They thought it was absolutely critical. They didn't want to risk an undercut and losing this track position. Will it pay off? Can their young charger, their championship contender, use that track position now against a car with tyres 8 laps younger?
Had they stopped a couple of laps later, would they still have had this track position? Did they have to make the call at exactly the moment that they did? They'll know when they run the simulations once the race is finished, but could they? That's the nagging doubt in my mind. Could they have left with a couple more laps for Max?
Well, he wouldn't have gained so much in that phase, would he? But
he might not have lost so much now.
Yeah, we thought it was a little bit early at the time, didn't we? So Vettel then up against Giovinazzi for position.
Well, Sebastian Vettel, if he can get past Giovinazzi, has 3 seconds between himself and Kimi Raikkonen, and maybe a point from this race. And a race in America, of course, he made his debut in the US Grand Prix, standing in for Robert Kubica back in 2007, and a race that he won here in 2013. But he's got Giovinazzi to clear before he can get to that final points position. Whilst we watch that, another 1/10 of a second. Lewis Hamilton pulls out in the first sector on Max Verstappen, another 3/10 of a second in the middle sector on this lap, and the gap coming down all the time as we ride on board. You can see how bumpy it is riding on board that Aston Martin, with Sebastian's head just bobbling around like one of those kind of toys on a spring on the back shelf of a road car, and clouts the curb and gets an even bigger shudder for his troubles, down in 12th place as it stands.
And And yeah, 3:10 to say Hamilton quicker, so he's still not in the DRS though, but he looks an awful lot closer at the end of this lap. 1.5 seconds now. So, and there was 4/10 in it. So 2 more laps and he'll be in drag reduction system, rear wing open zone. There's really nobody ahead to interfere with the battle. Will Hamilton struggle in the turbulent air? Can Verstappen keep his head? Verstappen must surely know if Hamilton gets in his slipstream with DRS down the back straight from 11 to 12, he'll have him.
We're approaching the closing stages. If you are just joining us, if you're a Sky Q or a Sky Glass customer, you can press the red button to watch highlights of the race alongside the live action, because trust me, you don't want to take your eyes off the live action for 1 second here. We're watching Sebastian Vettel chase down Antonio Giovinazzi. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso is going to retire from this race. That's both Alpines out.
Yeah, rear wing broke up. Retire the car. Okay, copy.
Rear wing issue for Fernando Alonso. It was trouble at the rear of the car for Esteban Ocon. I wonder if the two are connected. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they were. 1.5 seconds the gap at the end of the last lap. But
so far, Verstappen's a 10th up on Hamilton on this lap. Now he's in the turbulent air. Wow.
He needs DRS. To make that extra advance, just to put yourself within striking distance. Has Verstappen been quite cute here and just saved a bit from his tyres and managed his pace just a touch? While we're watching Lewis Hamilton chase down the race leader, his teammate Valtteri Bottas still chasing after Carlos Sainz, and that Ferrari has not been easy to pass. He's been doing that for quite a few laps.
And for the first time in quite a few laps, Verstappen increased his lead.
1.7 seconds is the gap as Hamilton plunges down from turn 1 through the second corner and then starts this magnificent series of corners modelled on the Maggots and Beckett's complex at Silverstone. Wonderful flowing part of the track, but you don't want to be following too closely. The car in front there, you do get disturbed by the dirty air. Bottas still can't get past Sainz. Paul di Resta, Sky Race Control.
Yeah, just to give you something, is Hamilton going on a bit more recharge to have a bit more in the battery at the end, but you know they've got a small amount of scope to play with, and he wants the attack in the last 3 laps.
Absolutely spot on, I would imagine, because Hamilton has just set the fastest first sector of this race so far. You could have a theory and a career as a detective there, Paul di Resta.
Yeah, it's mostly corners the first sector, but a good point there from Paul as to whether Hamilton is a bit like we see in qualifying, where they need a lap to charge the battery up fully and give it plenty. But again, middle sector, Verstappen faster. So this lap, even Stevens.
23 times in the past, Verstappen and Hamilton have finished 1 and 2 in a Formula 1 Grand Prix. Verstappen, before today, only ahead on 6 occasions. 4 of them have come this year. There goes Sebastian Vettel, finally clearing Antonio Giovinazzi down the back straight. He's now chasing after Giovinazzi's teammate Kimi Raikkonen, and he's about a couple of seconds behind Raikkonen. He could yet still claim a point in this race. We're looking at the maximum points though, for Max or for Lewis.
And again, 2/10 fast for Verstappen. Hamilton struggling in the dirty air. Verstappen still pumping in personal best. Ben Stiller watches on. 2 amazing drivers, and Verstappen is beginning to pull it back out again.
Has Verstappen just kept enough in hand? It was coming down to the last 3 laps. That is what we are on now.
Gap is up to 1.9. Come on, mate.
And just a gentle little bit of encouragement from his race engineer, and I'm sure Pete Bonington, Hamilton's race engineer, is doing exactly the same for him. You see the blinking lights as the battery is charged, under braking, going into the hairpin. Now he's going to get on the power, and as Hamilton does that, Bottas tries to make a move on Carlos Sainz and once again comes off second best.
Yeah, we saw Lewis really struggling to get the car turned. We got a yellow flag. Somebody is off in the first sector. Green again already. Kimi Raikkonen.
It's Kimi Raikkonen, and that has allowed Sebastian Vettel to now move up into the points. So Vettel's charge wasn't in vain. He's got into the points. Sergio Perez now gets past and laps the Alfa Romeo after Kimi went off and into the gravel. And on this lap, Hamilton's taken 4/10 out of Max Verstappen's lead, and that's Raikkonen having his little spin and going off into the gravel at turn 6.
I wonder if he's got a broken suspension or something, whether he just dropped it, but they might just catch Mick Schumacher towards the end. You're right. Lewis is 4/10 up on this lap. And needed to come back at him. Max has obviously taken plenty out of his battery as they go over the line. What is it now? We're back down to 1.5 again.
Closest it's been for a long time here. Hamilton, who took the lead from Max Verstappen at the start of this race by using the undercut and pitting early. Red Bull have put Verstappen back ahead of Hamilton, not once but twice in this race. Mercedes were saving their best until last. They told Hamilton it's going to come down to the last 3 laps. Now he's got to try and make that strategic decision pay off with a win. All the while he's doing that, his teammate Valtteri Bottas still trying to chase after Carlos Sainz, still getting closer to Carlos Sainz, still trying to get past Carlos Sainz, and he's not quite close enough going into turn 12.
They are going to catch Mick Schumacher at the very closing stage, perhaps in the next lap actually. But Verstappen then, I mean, these are exactly the 2 drivers you'd want leading your team, aren't they? And Verstappen with tremendous drive off turn 11 there. But we are seeing something very special this season with these drivers.
We've seen Hamilton chase down Verstappen before, and we've seen it vice versa, but this year it is in the midst of this close, absorbing, engrossing, epic championship battle. And as we head to the home stretch in this season, Hamilton is giving it absolutely everything here, but so far Verstappen has enough in hand. 3/10 Hamilton has taken out of Verstappen through the first 2 sectors of this lap. He's now under 1.2 seconds behind Max Verstappen. To get DRS advantage, he needs to be under 1 second, and when he does that, he starts to get a big speed advantage.
Yeah, 1.1 it was at the last count, look. 1.2 now. And Verstappen needs everything he's got on his last lap, and there is Mick Schumacher ahead of them. Will he come into play through the faster, 2 laps ago, through the faster section? Wow, Lewis surely can get DRS on this lap down the back straight.
If he could do any more to shove that car forward at a greater speed, Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton would be doing this, but with the tyre advantage Hamilton's got, he's starting to reel the Red Bull in, and look at that, we've now just momentarily dipped below 1 second.
And 2 more laps, it feels like the wind is picking up.
And that gusty wind is blowing a crosswind as the drivers will be heading down the back straight, and through the S's it's blowing across the drivers. Nice headwind into turn 1. Verstappen in the middle sector, absolutely epic there, Martin. He's got out a DRS threat with a really good sector.
Yeah, and driving nicely off turn 11 as well. What's going to happen with Mick Schumacher down into turn 12? Is he going to get out of the way? Is he going to, he'll be getting the blue flags.
And I think Hamilton got a really poor exit out of turn 11 because he's lost time down that back straight as well. Schumacher, I'm sure, will keep out of the way. Has that little miss at turn 11 of getting the traction right and getting the foot down right cost Hamilton here.
Can his Haskell please go out of the way? Get onto Michael.
Yeah, we are on it.
That's not Michael. That's not Mick. That's Michael Massey that he's saying. Just get onto him. Tell him to move.
Costing him because he's now in dirty air as well, effectively. And yeah, Mick's not getting out of the way. He should be getting out of the way. He does now. Here we go then. We're heading towards the last lap.
3.5 miles to go here at the Circuit of the Americas. Hamilton has now got DRS, but crucially, so has Verstappen, because he was lapping Mick Schumacher. And that gives him the chance to lap with the DRS.
Yeah, and Lewis did not open the rear wing down the pit straight. So
he must have not had it through the detection zone.
He mustn't in the detection, not quite the same. But as you say, by lapping the back marker, he managed to go down the pit straight with the wing open. And that's just given him the slight edge. But Lewis will surely have DRS down the back straight. And it's going to be oh so close into turn 12.
Hamilton's given it absolutely everything. Verstappen is keeping his cool, he's keeping his calm and composure, and he is keeping the lead as well. His first sector, a 10th up on Lewis Hamilton. It's taken him beyond that DRS threat. While that's been happening, Valtteri Bottas has finally got past Carlos Sainz. Verstappen has spent a long time in the closing stage of this race thinking my 6-point lead might be a 1-point deficit. When we leave the USA, he's going to keep that lead, I think.
And he is, because Hamilton didn't get DRS down the back straight. He'll not overtake him from here.
Mercedes gave Hamilton the charge. Red Bull gambled, they went early on the pit stops, they said to Max, you're going to have to make this work. Mercedes allowed Lewis Hamilton to charge, and it seems that Red Bull are going to win out here. This has been an engrossing US Grand Prix, and it could have swung Lewis Hamilton's way in the championship battle, but as they now have just 2 more corners to negotiate, Max Verstappen is going to lead and double his advantage in the World Championship. For the first time on US soil, Max Verstappen wins the US Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton has to settle for second. The charge got close, but not quite close enough. The fireworks on track are replaced by fireworks shooting into the air. Verstappen wins at COTA. What a Grand Prix that was.
Catching is one thing, passing is another, as we said, but Verstappen kept his head. That was crucial in amongst the back markers too. And that was a very, very important victory in his career and in his championship charge.
It's like you said, it could have been 1 point advantage for Lewis Hamilton at the end of the race. It's not. He's doubled his lead in the World Championship.
What a drive, Max. What a drive. Masterful. Well done, mate.
They asked a lot of him.
Yes, guys. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Sheer class, Max. That was classy. What a drive. What a drive.
We did it. Great job, guys.
Great job all round. They got it right, but only just. Sergio Perez comes home to finish third. That is now 200 podiums in Formula One for Red Bull. Charles Leclerc, 4th place, and a fine 4th place for him and Ferrari. Ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, finishes 5th. Bottas got past Carlos Sainz. Norris, Tsunoda, Vettel completed the points. Christian Horner, we've just heard you on the team radio. Wow, that was a bit tense. You got it right, but only just.
I think I've aged about 25 years in that race, so I really didn't think we could hang on at the end there because it was such a long stint, and you know, we were out of tyres after I last spoke to you. I didn't want to give that away, so for him to protect the tyres, hang in there, be quick where he needed to be, he deserves that victory today.
Yeah, he really won that one for you, didn't he, Christian? He kept his head, kept his pace. The back markers weren't that easy for you.
Yeah, I mean, Mick on the last lap cost us, but he also gave us the DRS. He gave me a heart attack as well. But you know, Max, he just managed to keep enough in hand, and you know, that was a classy drive today. Crucial drive.
Do you think that could be the defining moment in this championship battle? When we all add up all the points at the end of the season, is this the bit that wins Max the title, do you think?
They all do. They all count, every single point. So you know, it was big for us to beat Mercedes here, get the pole, first pole other than a Merc, you know, for the last 7 years, get that win against Lewis here, who we know is a phenomenal, you know, driver around here. So that's a big win for us.
Christian, thanks ever so much, and thanks for coming on straight after the race too. It has to be said, Martin, take a bow, both drivers there, that put on different strategies. They gave it absolutely everything.
Yeah, we're watching something very, very special this year. Lewis got a World Championship point for fastest lap. Sorry if you've already said that, Crofty, but he did get that extra point.
I didn't
with
see
a
it.
138.485. So he stole that and saved a point.
So that's 11 then.
Yeah, is it not 12? It was 6. He won by 7 points, 25 to 18, minus 1. So I'm going to call that 12.
Lewis, nevertheless, a brilliant drive. Brilliant drive, even if we don't like the end result. Brilliant.
Got onto the radio to say to Lewis, from quite early on, you're racing for the win here. And he knew it, and he very much knew that the win was possible, but Verstappen is a difficult obstacle to try and get past on the track. 8 laps older, his tyres, and 8 laps that he had to suffer at the end.
Really nice radio call that from Max, wasn't it? Not like, oh, you left me a lot to do, didn't you, at the end? It was like, I like it when you get punchy. I like it when you push the strategy.
He does today.
Yes.
That's very much the case. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's an acknowledgement between the two drivers of a hard-fought, well-fought race. But for the moment, Verstappen is going to run into the arms of his expectant crew and kickstart the celebrations. Saw him last night. He looked so calm, as if it was just a traditional Saturday night. He said, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm not going to allow myself the chance to dream about anything that might come after tomorrow, but I'm going to get my sleep, go to bed early, and it's almost as if he doesn't feel at times he's in a championship battle.
He was a bit punchy on the radio on Friday, wasn't he? He wasn't in his best mood. He'll be happier now. That was a cracking race.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Bottas got past Carlos Sainz for 6th. Norris, Tsunoda and Vettel completed the points. Good race for Yuki Tsunoda as well. He battled hard for those 2 points. We lost Gasly, we lost Ocon, and we lost Alonso in the race. Mazepin and Schumacher bringing up the rear. George Russell finished 14th ahead of Nicholas Latifi. Lance Stroll 12th ahead of Kimi Raikkonen. Antonio Giovinazzi finished 11th, and he had some decent tussles, didn't he, with Fernando Alonso. Your maths is way better than mine, Martin Brundle. Verstappen, 12 points then over Lewis Hamilton. That is the lead that they take now to Mexico. Valtteri Bottas with 185 points consolidates that 3rd place ahead then of Sergio Perez, who's now just 1 point ahead of Lando Norris, 4th and 5th. In fact, Perez goes over Norris, so goes above Norris with that podium today. Sainz, Ricciardo, Gasly and Alonso completing the top 10 in the Constructors' Championship. The gap now down to 22.5 points between Mercedes and Red Bull. McLaren have a 3.5 point lead over Ferrari.
Yeah, that's a great battle to watch for the next 5 races as well, isn't it?
That is tight as my shirt after a night on the brisket, these championships at the moment.
I mean, Sergio did a great job all weekend. He was really in the groove, but as a measure of just how amazing Verstappen and Hamilton were there, he was 42 seconds off the lead, Sergio, with a great drive, and he is a great driver. But I think that's as good a measure as you need for just how these 2 drivers have lifted themselves.
Well, we can all take a bit of a breather now for Verstappen, who in the past here has gone up to the podium, only to be told you can't go on to the podium. Today, he's going to stand on the podium for the first time in the US, with a crowd right underneath him as well. Be a big celebration after that one. He's got a lot of fans here, as has Lewis Hamilton. Both drivers attracting a fair amount of support throughout the course of this weekend. Mercedes will, well, they'll go back and think we gave it absolutely everything, but maybe we just didn't have the pace in the car today that we needed.
Remembering Sergio there looking a bit hot and bothered, remembering he didn't have a drink in the car today.
Yep, it's a good job that he's spun his team's an energy drink company. He might just need that, to be fair. Ben Stiller here with his son this weekend. Bit of dads and lads time. But Ben Stiller talking to dads. Jos Verstappen, who here cheering on his son. And I think equally as cool about the way this season is evolving. Let's go down to Jenson Button. He's got Lewis Hamilton with him.
Lewis, that was very tense for all of us watching.
You can't hear a word you're saying.
You can't hear a word. I'll shout as loud as I can. It was so tense for everyone watching. Red Bull jumped early. It looked like you guys had stayed strong. It looked like you had the right strategy, but it didn't quite come off at the end.
No, well, firstly, congratulations to Max. He did a great job today. It was such a tough race. Got a good start. Gave it absolutely everything, but at the end of the day, they just had the upper hand this weekend, and we couldn't have really asked for more. But a big thank you to my team for, great pit stops, great hard work throughout the weekend, and what an amazing crowd. To perform in front of you guys is such an honor.
Yeah, it's a very special race here, and I'm sure it's one you wanted to come away with a victory. You got that bonus fastest lap, which is a point, but yeah, let us know how it feels to just be in front of this crowd. It feels like we've broken into the US, which is pretty special.
Yeah, I think this is definitely our acceptance into the US, and what a place to be. As I said, it's a real honor to be out here. I hope we get more races out here. I hope that the sport continues to grow, because you can tell just how great the fans are out here. So I hope we get to come out more.
Great fighting spirit, Lewis. Cheers.